Hi guys, welcome back to My Steps to Sobriety, my show on YouTube and this podcast with me, your host, Stefan Neff. Today's another beautiful day for an interview. I love it. I love it, love it, love it. Because I can get to connect with all these wonderful people out there in the world. And I must say, this is something I am very proud to say I'm addicted of, to make connection with wonderful people. And today is no exception. And I was looking forward to this interview. I've got Brent Scarpo with me. Brent is a man with many abilities, but he is a man who in his own right, he has taken the bull by its horns. He actually managed to gel the two passions in his life, the film industry and teaching others and helping others to grow, so that the life coaching into and gel that and make that one cohesive thing. Because there's so many lessons to learn out there. And after all, the film industry is so beautiful because it allows us to escape. It allows us to take on in our mind these kind of new alter personas, different people. We can be Spider-Man. We can cry when in real life you don't dare to cry. Those kind of things. So it's actually wonderful. So I want to hear from Brent, you today on my show. How was life, or how is life in the film industry? And talk about those beautiful, beautiful products that you have worked on. So, Brent Scarpo, welcome to my show.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful. Welcome, and thank you for having me on your show, as well as in New Zealand. New Zealand is one of my bucket list countries to go visit because I've heard so many wonderful things.
And it is.
Yes,
it is. Man, you come. I'll guide you around. You have got the free trip. You have got the behind the scenes look. I'll organize for you. Okay.
I cannot wait. I will take you up on that offer.
I would be delighted. Brent, you have been working on wonderful, wonderful projects such as SHAWSHANK Redemption, such as Matilda, names that really a lot of people recognize regardless of their own age, regardless of where they are in the world. So these are some of the really beautiful, beautiful legacies that someone has left. But I mean, how did it all start? How the hell did you stumble into the film industry? What was your start?
It's a great. So I didn't, long before Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now and living in the present moment and so on and so forth. I think as a young child, I was born into living in the present moment, and just didn't know that that's what they called it. And so for me, I lived as presently as I possibly could. I'm an intuitive life coach, so I knew at a very early age that I had these abilities to be able to, see things in the future, know things about people that ordinary people may not know, and it just allowed me to be very grounded. So at 7, I knew that I loved the entertainment industry. That was exacerbated by television and so on and so forth. But there was just something amazing about, well, to your point, how you started out your wonderful podcast, just your passion, your love for meeting people and different people and unique people. And to me, that's what the entertainment industry allowed me to do. It's like whether it was a TV show or a movie or even a commercial, you get the essence of someone or something based on a writer and a director and a producer. So at 7, I just went to my mother. I said, I'm going to be an actor. And she's like, okay. So I literally shaped my life since I was 7, because I was born in California, but I was raised in Pennsylvania. To your point, because as I've said to many, because as you know, I was a speaker for many years and continue to do so, but I was in the college circuit, and I had drug and alcohol program that I did. And I'd always start out that program the same way. When I was 4 years old, my father made a decision. He decided whether to love me or whether to love alcohol. And my father decided to love alcohol more than me, and he left. And so for me, the concept of choices, the concept of being in the moment, and I knew at 7 when we had to leave our beautiful home in California and come to Warren, Pennsylvania, where, the sheep outweigh the number of people as far as population is concerned, that there was something significant happening. So my mother told me I was from California. That's where movies are made. And I looked at her at 7. I said, great, I'm going there. So I fashioned my life based on that from 7 years old. To the point where when my mother wanted me to go to college, to university, I said no. And we got into a rather large row about that because my passion was to go to California and study at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. Yeah. But as in life, you have to have conversations and you have to have compromise. So I ended up getting a degree in English Literature Communication at a school on the East Coast. Went to California right afterwards, studied at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, had a good 7, 8, 9, 10 years, paying my dues, getting an agent, doing commercials, doing some bit parts in TV and movies and all that good, cruise ships and children's theater. And then a friend of mine just asked me, a casting director friend, if I'd be interested in actually being an assistant casting director, which I said no. I was like, I'm so not interested in that. You need to hire me so I can pay rent, is basically what I told her. And she said, no, I think you'd be really good, and I was like, I'm not interested. And she called me twice, to ask me to be her assistant. I said no. And I was working in the world of education to supplement my acting income. So I was working in high schools and middle schools and colleges and universities, either teaching assistant or teaching classes, which I loved. That was my other, passion. I just love working with kids. So finally she called me a third time and she's like, look, I really need an assistant. And she started to cry. So I'll let you know that if you ever want anything from me, if you start to cry, I pretty much will give you whatever you want. And so I was like, I said, why are you crying? She said, well, I just got these 2 films. One's called Ed Wood with Johnny Depp, and another one's called Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption. And I can't sign a contract unless they bring the assistant, unless I bring the assistant with me. I was like, I said, okay, tell me a little bit more about these films. So Johnny Depp, obviously, Ed Wood, that was shooting in LA. And then this other one was based on a Stephen King novella called Different Seasons. It was shooting in Ohio. I thought it was the stupidest title I'd ever heard in my entire life. And I said, well, how much, what would I get paid? She told me. And I was like, you should have started the conversation with that 2 conversations ago. It was like an insane amount of money. I'm like, what do you do? You need it. So I said, yes, again, being in the moment, allowing myself to not block myself in terms of, because I was saying no to something that was a huge opportunity. And so I all of a sudden found myself being behind the camera. I was the assistant to the background under 5 casting directors. So Deborah Aquila, she cast, the main parts, but all those prisoners, all those guards, all the people that had 10 lines or under, we cast because we didn't get a huge budget because Frank Darabont had never directed a film in his entire life. And rumor has it that they wanted to direct Castle Rock, and he had 3 separate meetings with them and turned away an insane, like 100 times more insane than my salary amount of money just to keep directorial rights. And normally that doesn't work in Hollywood. And they loved the film so much they went ahead and they gave him directorial rights. But they didn't give us a lot of money. They gave us $25 million and we had to get an A-list star. So I, did it. It was a moment. One of the top 3 summers of my life. Afterwards, I was hooked. So then I opened up my own casting company and, worked on Air Force One, That Thing You Do, Matilda, did TV commercials for probably about good 4 or 5 years.
Casting director. That's our assistant casting director in this case. You would not think that this is actually such a revealing and giving job, but ultimately it is you are meeting people and you are seeing them transforming in front of you. And that can be quite a powerful lesson. I've got two young boys, so, well, no longer young, they're 19 and 21 now. But for a while we went to Armageddon, and so like Comic-Con in the United States, smaller version here in New Zealand. And one of the things that I always appreciated most, apart from spending money and time with my boys, was to actually listen to the actors that were coming across and were talking and sharing parts of their lives, giving us glimpses into their lives. And it was beautiful to see the people behind the roles, to see the true people. How does a really nice guy transform into an arch villain? Things like that. So you actually saw people in the raw. You saw them coming in, probably sweating, a little bit of doing their own rigmarole, getting them right for that 10 seconds where they have to prove that they're the right people for the right job. So there is a lot of things that you can glean from such transformations. Did that intrigue you at the time? I know you're all now into transformations with being a life coach, but was that, but how was it actually to work in the casting role? Was that something you cherished?
Yeah, I think whenever you find those dimensions and those layers of your life, right? And I always say life is like an onion, we're constantly peeling it back to discover the essence of who we are. And I'd rather doubt that we'll ever get to the center, or if we do, that's when we make our ultimate transition. That's into heaven or whatever particular belief system you have. But no, I think it's just fascinating, especially with Shawshank, because that was beyond transformative. I mean, as I shared with you, prior to our podcast, I've decided to, I have a book that's going to come out in May of 2022 called The Red Balloon. But then I've watched Shawshank so many times. I've, been to premieres. 2 years ago, we all gathered together in Mansfield, Ohio after 25 years and celebrated the 25th anniversary. So just to see the transformation of the actors from when they started to now, and just how this movie has changed their life, specifically financially, was crazy. But, if you remember the film, and there's a lot of behind scenes that people just never see, which is why I think it's just time for this book. My role was, I was specifically given the job to try to find as many guards, as many prisoners as possible, which we had over 3,000. I mean, that's the basis of that film. And so I went into every strip club, bar, biker place. I mean, this little boy from California was going to places I had never been into in my entire life. And I was looking for every ruffian, And so talk about being open to meeting different people, places, and things, and personalities, and then I've got to sit there and convince these guys to be in a movie. Are you kidding me? So it was just transformative, just in that. And we would have these, massive calls of 500, 600 people on different days in a big auditorium, and it's not often that a major film comes into a tiny town like Mansfield, Ohio. There's two reasons why we chose that too. One, it had an abandoned prison. The reformatory had been there since the 1800s, and literally had just closed 2 years before, that was spooky in of itself. And they had a brand new prison that was gorgeous. It also had, unfortunately, an 11% unemployment rate. And so we needed people for at least 4 or 5 months. Well, we cast, and again, guys with tattoos and beards and hair down to their butt, and it was wonderful. But this is my first jaunt in the casting part. I always was the actor that showed up, met the casting director. I would transform into my character. I would cry. I would be the rapist or whatever, and hope that I get the job. So now it's much different. I'm looking at, and it's really good too, because people really loved working with me, because I was an actor's actor. I was a casting director who understood actors, because I started out as an actor. So I remember a pivotal moment during the process, because we had about 6 weeks to cast prior to the beginning of principal photography. So we have thousands of people. We've got the different scenes, the shooting schedule. And I remember my supervisor, she's like, we're probably in big trouble. I was like, why? And so she handed me this book. If you know Shawshank, it's a period piece that goes from 1945 to 1976, right? And so R&D, every movie's got a research person, gives us the Maine Penitentiary, because it's based in Maine's handbook from 1946. And in it are pictures of how the prisoners and the guards need to look. Because back in that day, every Friday in the Maine Penitentiary, every guard and every prisoner had to get a haircut. Now, do you remember your father and what he looked like in 1945? And I went, oh no. And we had to have a meeting with all 3,000 guys. We made massive posters of what a 1945 haircut looked like. Similar a little bit to, right? And I went, oh my God, they will never do clean. You got to be clean shaven, no facial hair, 1945 haircut. And I remember just sitting there. We brought them all in, saying we're having a meeting. We said we're going to start casting parts. So it was packed, and we had different posters all around the room, and we put covers on them. And I was like, it's going to be a mass exodus. It's going to be a mass exodus. We're screwed. So we're like, we're so excited you're here, and we're going to start looking at specific roles for people. And oh, by the way, this film's called a period piece. Anybody know what a period piece is? And people are like, a period piece? I was like, oh, this is like. So I went and I took all the little veils off the posters, which were giant. They said, well, this is a period piece that starts in 1945 and goes to 1976. So what we're going to do for each of you, because you always raise the positive, is we've hired 10 barbers, which we did, in the city of Mansfield. And every Friday, we're going to give you vouchers. And every Friday, you're going to get a haircut like one of the ones that you see up here, because it is a period piece. And if you want to get paid and be in this film, we have to have this kind of look. And I was waiting. And people were like they were, you could see when they were trying to put it together, like the guys with the long hair and the beards down to their belly and the whole thing. And so then the questions came, it's like, so we have to look like that? And we're like, yes, you do. Yes, you do. And they're like, well, who's going to pay for that? And it's like, well, we're going to give you vouchers. And then every Friday you show up at any one of the 10 barbers. And, it was about 15 minutes of confusion, because they're not used to this, right? Sure. And then it was like, so what happens if we don't do this, right? And my supervisor, she's like, you can't be in our film because it is a period piece, and we unfortunately can't use you. I think out of 3,000 people, if memory serves me correctly, I think we lost about probably between 50 to 100, right? And I was shocked that the rest stayed, right? And so we're like, okay, so we went through the process. When you shoot a film, you don't do it in order. It's always shot out of order. So the first day of principal photography is when Andy Dufresne's character is on the bus with the new fish and comes to the prison and is processed and meets Sergeant Hadley and that scene. And I hadn't seen the guys, and I had developed a pretty good relationship, and we had picked those, I think it was 12 guys, to be on the bus with the Tim Robbins character. So they were going to get major movie time. And I'll never forget, because we started at 3:00 in the morning to get them dressed, because now they have to be in 1945 prison garb. So we have to dress 3,000 men starting at 3 a.m. And we didn't get the first shot off till about 1:00 that afternoon. But I remember when we got the guys, and they're, the ones that the director had picked to sit with Tim Robbins' character, and I didn't recognize anybody. I mean, transformation. I was like, who? And they're like, Brent, this is Ziggy. And I'm like, oh my God. I said, Ziggy. He said, yeah. I said, no, it's not. He said, yes, it is. Now, Ziggy had a very distinct character, because I asked the guys, what have you done? Here are the things that we're looking at. You need, who knows how to tar a roof? Who knows how to work the laundry mats in the prison? Who knows all this stuff? Oh, I do. Great. I said, how many people have tattoos? Where are they located? All that. So Ziggy, he was funny. He came up to me. He was like, I got a tattoo. I was like, oh, okay. And I couldn't see it. He goes, show me. He was like this, right? And it said, F you. And I was like, oh, okay. So when I saw him and his hair was down to, and right, he was 1945, right? And I said, Ziggy? He said, yeah. I said, no. He goes, I said, oh my God. Right? So we ended up doing the scene, and I had an office in the basement a couple miles away from the prison where we shot at. Back then in 1993, you had voice operated, message systems. So my message machine was blinking. I was like, oh God, what's going on? Right. So I push it and this is what I hear. Oh no, it was the next day. So we shoot that day. The next day I stayed in the office and, I got back to the office and I had all these messages. And so I'm pushing the button to hear the messages. And we're in Mansfield, Ohio. Is this Brent Scarpo? Listen, my name is Wanda Dell. My son, Billy, is on that. Look, you can keep him on that film as long as you like. We have never seen him look so good, so well behaved, so nice. This is just a miracle. Beep. Is this Shawshank film? My name is Donna. Look, my husband, Will, he's on that film. I'm telling you, he never looked so good, smells so good. He actually bought me flowers and brought me I must have had over a dozen grandmas, moms, wives, girlfriends saying, oh my God.
I've got goosebumps, man.
They've just, to your point in your question, it's amazing when we have significant shifts in what we believe we are versus who we can be and how the world around us reacts to it. Women, I was the saint in Mansfield, Ohio. They're like, their husbands had just transformed, and when they saw, who they could become, when they turned into that character, because the character really comes from the essence of the gold that's inside of us. We call that the vein of gold. A great book that talked about that any actor that acts has to find that vein of gold of authenticity within themselves in order for that character to emerge. And so it was amazing. It was 4 months where, just for them to see their self-worth, self-esteem, self-confidence emerge through a costume, through a haircut, through grooming skills, through sitting next to Morgan Freeman in a scene. Was just a magical experience.
Oh, how beautiful is that? But it just shows the power that simple acts can entail if you believe in it. Sometimes it is so easy to stay in your rut, even if the rut is highly painful and toxic. You're uncertain. Should you go? Should you change? There's always the, hey, at least I'm consistent. I know the devil who I know kind of thing. Here you are. You have taken them out of their comfort zone. You encouraged them to role play in this case, and they chose to follow the money because that was probably the main thing, or the
I think so. I think so. Yeah, absolutely.
But then the flow-on effects of that. It's just amazing.
Well, so many of them, one of the people I enjoy reading is Les Brown. And I think so often he's got this great quote that what I experience is them living their fears and not their dreams. Right. Nice. So much of their life was living their fear. I'm in the bar. I'm in the strip club. I'm not very kind to my mother or my girlfriend or my wife or my kids. And then I come in Hollywood. Right. And I said, well, by the way, I'm going to give you an opportunity to live a dream. Right. So many of them, I often now retrospectively as a life coach, because I wasn't back then, look back at that experience and go, wow, no one gave them the opportunity, or they never felt as if they could live the dream. And so much of their energy was spent on living in fear.
How beautiful. And you see that there are a lot of social experiments out there on YouTube where, for example, barbers go to the homeless and for free do a haircut or a complete makeover. And it's
Yes.
just blowing your mind, the
Yeah,
transformation.
I just saw it here. I just saw that in the news last night.
Mm.
I'm in Nevada, just kind of hanging out for a little bit for the Thanksgiving vacation. I was watching the news, and there's a guy in Vegas, and that everything you just said is what he did. They interviewed him. He does it completely free of charge. He goes into the harshest neighborhoods of Las Vegas, and he does an entire makeover for the homeless. And then the homeless interviewed. Or interviewed afterwards. So you're absolutely, and it always starts with planting a seed. I always say to my clients, it's not about the end result. It's about taking the first step towards the end result.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
this is giving yourself the freedom, giving yourself the permission to actually change. And
step one. That's step one, as we well know. Yeah.
It's the hardest one. It's the very hardest one. So,
it's just like, if everyone goes, so 12 and 11, let me just do 4. I'm like, yeah, but you gotta kind of do 1 first. And to your point, that's why those 50 to 100 people left. They're like, no, I'm not willing to change. I don't care how much funny it is. I'm going to live in fear. I'm going to live with the concept of who it is that I am, despite the fact that, 600 people were moving to Mansfield, Ohio, celebrities and so on and so forth. And I mean, we transformed that town. I mean, we dumped $26 million into that town, and I visited it ever since. And it's extraordinary, just the transformation of our presence for 4 months there, how it transformed that town.
Oh, beautiful. Oh, beautiful. And it just shows that if you can actually model a new life and make it palpable, visible, touchable for people, they suddenly say, well, if they can do it, maybe I can do it. And I guess that's why I have you on my show. That's why I make myself so transparent and so open, because I am an alcoholic. I lived in not nice circumstances when it comes to my own mental health, depression, anxiety, PTSD. Very, very good friends of mine. Yet on the outside, it is. I try to keep the facade up. Probably not so well, but I was a high functioning alcoholic. Oh, for fuck's sake! No, let's throw that all out, and let's actually show that you can live such a different life, that you can go out there and actually transform. And that it's okay not to be okay, but it's not okay to just shut up and suffer in silence and not ask for help. That's no. And your story shows that so beautiful. Go out there and actually, what could possibly go wrong in trying change if you have decided, actually, this is the person who I want to be, and what would that entail? In this case, covering up your tattoos and actually having a haircut. It's really not so much, is it? If you think about it.
Right. But on the outside, it's not. But then all of us, my mother used to say, the most constant entity in the world is change. Right? The most constant entity in the world is change. Right? And how we relate and adapt to that defines our human existence and our human presence. Right? And so that's why, so much, my book is about my relationship with her and all the wisdom that she taught me. But yeah, tomorrow is going to be different than today. 5 minutes from now is going to be different from this moment in time. A week from now, there's nothing we can do about it, right? So we can either fight the system, right, which is why the 50 to 100 people walked out. They're like, nope, I'm not changing. Thank you very much for playing. No matter what my higher power has brought to me in terms of this opportunity, where others said, because I saw people's faces, they were like, oh, I don't know, kind of deal. And then, that's that bit. So you got the 3 groups. You got the one group that just up and left, right? Not changing. Thank you very much. I'm not even going to face the fear. I'm going to hold on to the old paradigm of who it is that I am. Then there was that group that was like, could I ask one more question? I was like, yeah. So how much are we getting paid?
Exactly.
And I was like, well, how long are we going to work? And like, well, we don't know exactly until you get the parts, right? And then so what they're doing is they're facing fears. They're processing it. They're looking at the opportunity that's just been shown to them versus ignoring it altogether with that first group. It's funny. I've never looked at it this way until now, right? And then there was a group like, yeah, just sign me up. I don't give a shit. Just go ahead, cut off my head, strip me naked, do whatever you want. As long as I get paid, I'm good. I'm like, oh, okay.
No, amazing. I mean, here you are.
And that's life. That's life. Right?
So
Isn't
true.
that life?
So true. And nowadays Nowadays I embrace it. Nowadays I cherish change. I cherish that.
Yes.
But yeah, it would be nice if life actually decided to give me just a little bit of break in between, not just a new change with some crap happening every 6 hours. It's just getting a bit, Right. But no, coming back to you. You are my guest. Not, I'm not. This is no monologue here from me.
It's you and I together.
True. But I mean, here you are as the person responsible to actually make such a huge project come together. Because without you casting, without you actually bringing those people in time together, having them ready, being there at 3:00 in the morning, and that whole thing with a huge production pressure. Every film is production pressure. There is no much fat in between which you can cut away, but there's a bit of a funny fudge factor. It doesn't matter if it starts at 3 or at 5. Nah. So how did you deal with the pressures? I mean, what was your recipe there? Because these pressures, it must be to a degree hours of boredom and many moments of terror. That's how they describe anesthesia, which is my profession. So how did you deal with the pressure of having to be there then at your best, more or less at all times?
That's a great. I applaud. I've done thousands of interviews in my life. I really have, and I appreciate that question only because I rarely get it because I've had it, but not quite in the way that you just presented it. So I applaud you on the question because when people give me a question that I'm like, oh, never didn't have that one. That's good. Here's how I'll answer it. I mean, let me think here now. I think it was in my early 30s when that was happening, right? Now I'm in my 50s. And so at that time, in my own, because I have a life coach, I've had life coaches, I practice what I preach. So at that time, that worked for me because I was addicted to chaos, right? And if you really want work in an environment that's completely chaotic, work on a film set. I mean, it's crazy. But because when you first asked me the question, I'm like, that wasn't pressure. That was fun. It's like, when Tim Robbins walked off the set and said, I quit, which most people don't know that story. We were like, oh, this is not good. This is so not good. Talk about pressure and anxiety. And people are like making phone calls the next day to try to find work because he quit. He's like, I'm done. Forget this film. That film almost didn't happen, right? So for me, because of where I was at in my own evolutionary process, I just fed off of this. There was nothing, to me, the more chaotic and the more crazy, the more I gravitated towards it because it was my way of being able to say, oh, I can fix that. I can make that happen. I can, no, go on, bring it on. Like you think, no. There were stressful moments in time, but whereas another personality would just crumble and freak out, right? I was addicted to that kind of behavior and environment. And so for me to be in the entertainment industry made a lot of sense because it's unpredictable all the time. I mean, every second I since 1991, I have not had a traditional job. I can't do it. It's impossible. Like I can't, I remember one time I had a 9-to-5 job while I was trying to do the acting and such. And then I ended up getting fired from it. And I was upset over the whole situation. But when it happened, I remember I had a moment because I hated the job. I've been in for 5 years and I got let go for the wrong reasons, because I was one of the best employees they had. But again, you got to take what happens to you and look at what the lesson is versus combat it. And, even though I was in my 20s at the time and I was combating it, and I was upset and frustrated because I couldn't pay rent, I remember I wrote this mantra down for myself because I really hated the job. And so I wrote this mantra about 6 months afterwards, because that's when I devoted myself to my craft. That's when I'm like, you know what? My one mentor friend said, look, just say to yourself that you're going to pay your rent through acting, and you'll be shocked on how quickly you find acting jobs versus staying in the world of fear and security with my 9-to-5 job, which I absolutely hated. So when he said that, I wrote this mantra down, which I live to this day. And that is, I will no longer wake up at 9 to wait for 5. Right? That's just not who I am. But now that principal photography and the pressure that you speak, I mean, we worked Monday through Saturday, minimum 12 hours. There was one time I worked 21 hours. I had 2 hours sleep, and then I had to get up an hour later to start the next day. Right? In Hollywood, our running joke is we don't sweat, we glisten. Right? That's who we are. Right? It's not, if you're looking for that 9-to-5 job and then you go to see your husband, your wife, and then you kiss your kid, there's a reason why I'm single. And there's a reason why I don't have children. Right? Because it just didn't work for me. So finding the essence of who you are, your pressure was my crack, that was my alcohol. Now, I think a lot of us, there's a very, if you're familiar with the Myers-Briggs personality test, there's 16 personalities. I love it. All my clients have to take it when I have them on as a client. So as you probably know, there's 16 personalities. I highly recommend people take it. And then each of those personalities makes up a percentage of the world, with the most popular being 13.8% and the most rare, which is the turbulent advocate, 1.5%. Guess which one I am. So having done that, I get myself. So I loved it. I loved being there till 3 a.m. I loved not having, sleeping 2-3 hours a day. It just, to me, it was a representation of being alive, or my definition of being alive at the moment in time.
Intriguing that you say that, because I recognize myself in that. Around about that time in my life, I loved emergency surgery. So being the anesthetist on for the emergency theater, being called to ED, to the emergency department. 24 hours on, I was buzzing. Great, another case. Ooh, oh. It was all adrenaline, bang, bang, bang.
Absolutely.
But my problem was, at that time, I had never learned to switch off. So I was always switched on. I had traits of PTSD that were so hidden yet so plain inside, which made me a great anesthetist. It gave me great because I had the situational awareness and stuff like that. But it also meant I was always switched on. And the only way I could switch off was through alcohol. So it was truly playing hard, but also, working hard and truly playing hard on the days or hours that I had off. Was that a temptation for you?
Yeah, I totally get it. It's, I think as we, when you go from your 20s to your 30s to your 40s to your 50s, there's those pivotal moments, what I call in life coaching, that there's, you talked about, I wish I would have more time, without the change. I think we do get that. I started writing down in my journal those significant moments in my life that it just merits change. The day you're born, that's a significant, right? When you all of a sudden leave your mother's breast, that's a significant. When you go to school for the first time, when you go to elementary, then to middle, and then to high school, when you have your first crush, when you first have either make love or have sexual intercourse, when you have the person that you love most die unexpectedly, when you graduate from college, when you decide to get married, your first child, all these things happen. And then when you get to my one friend says, the big trigger for her is the zeros. I was like, the zeros? She's like, yeah, every time I have a birthday, it ends in a 0. Huge trigger, right? So the 20 to the 30 to the 40 to the 50, and she just turned 70. She's like, I was good at 69. It was no big deal. And then the 0 came. And then all the thoughts, right? I was fine, 69, and then the 0 came. So, it's, I think we go through shifts. For me, it happened around 2010 because I was on this amazing roller coaster that I so adored, and I was having some difficulty because I was touring with a documentary that I was fairly known for on bullying. And I was traveling, 10 years in a row, 1 million miles on United Airlines, 1.6 million people, trying to save the world, trying to combat bullying into love and understanding and tolerance. And then I just wasn't feeling so great. I was like, what is going on? Right. And I would go home after being in, Australia or New Zealand or South Dakota, and I would be talking to thousands of people. I transitioned out of the entertainment industry to producing and directing my own film, which got a lot of awards. And then people started wanting me to come speak on it. And that was like 10 years of my life nonstop. And I'm all about asking for help. I'm really good at that. I wasn't, but I learned that lesson, thank God. So, I went to life coaches and therapists and such. I remember going to this, and I wasn't getting the answers I wanted, really. I was like, and I went to this one psychiatrist, and, I, was having issues with, just not making the best of choices in some areas, right? And so he said, he goes, I don't think you have, because I was wondering, do I have an addiction to food? Do I have addiction, all these things? And he said, I don't think you have an addiction. He goes, I think you have depression, and you're using that as a tool to cover up the depression. And I remember looking at him, I said, well, one, you're high. I said, because I said, I travel all over the world. I'm, at that time I called myself a motivational speaker. And now I call myself a transformational speaker. I said, I talked to thousands of people, and I did this big, soliloquy of like, I pump people up, and I go to that. I've been to all 50 US states, and I've talked to, at least 100,000 people a year, and And he just sat there. And I'm like, I did waiting for the curtain in my Oscar nomination. And he said, well, that's all well and good. He said, but how do you feel when you're home alone? And I was like, and that was huge, because that's when I started remembering when I would go home and I would just cry for no reason. And I couldn't understand what that was. I'd be watching a comedy on TV, and I would use that time in between the audiences. Right. And I was like, okay, you have my attention. He said, I think you're suffering from depression. And every time you go out and speak, and every time you have 1,000 people, my large house with 10,000 people, that keeps you from dealing with what's happening in between all those, moments in time. So it was just an extraordinary aha moment for me, because I really didn't have the ability to be able to sit in my newly diagnosed depression, because I was on the road all the time. Right. It's what, I used to work at the Ice House in Pasadena as a young kid, and I was the box office manager. And it's one of the first comedy stores and comedy places in the United States. Well, these comedians may be funny on stage, but they're some of the most depressing people I've ever talked to in my entire life. Right. That's why they're so funny. Right. They're on stage so that they can feel good about themselves. Right. And, we wonder why, in our industry, especially, we have tons of people struggling with addiction, alcohol. And I've had a lot of actor friends of mine that have overdosed and died. And, they're trying to be something else. Right. They choose a profession where I'm going to be another character for a vast majority of my life. And if you don't have yourself rooted, in the character called Brent, in the character called Stefan, and those characters, because that's part of who we are, it can be problematic.
Oh, it's beautifully said, isn't it? And I remember, God, goodness, I was having done 2 fellowships. I'm an anesthetist, then I became hyperbaric medicine doctor, then became a pain doctor, then I became all that. So it's all, I was putting these kind of acronyms behind my name, working my guts out. And I was thinking I should become an intensive care doctor as well. And one day shift was finished, and I put in the morning, came home after a long night work, put in Forrest Gump. And within 5 minutes, I started crying.
Yeah.
And I could not stop crying for pretty much the whole film. And then I thought, I wonder if there is a message there somewhere for me. But it was so bizarre. And it is, What shall I say?
Oh, how interesting. So Forrest Gump was actually up against Shawshank Redemption for the Oscars. So I cry for a whole different reason, because we didn't get the Oscar. Forrest Gump got it.
Oh, sorry, I did not mean to rub salt in your wound.
No, it's all good. It's fascinating what you're sharing, because the life coach is coming out in me. So, what's interesting is, you're somewhat to my point on some levels. Here you are helping with everybody else's pain but your own, right? It's like, this is what I do, right? And I'm doing the same thing. I'm motivating you. I'm transforming you. I have words of wisdom. I'm going to tell you which direction to go, what steps to take, and so on and so forth. But again, that then pointed back to me and what was going on with me. And then, that whole, I'm in my journey, you've got that concept of you can't give what you don't have. I don't really believe in that, to be quite honest with you. I think you can, but I think you can give more of who you really are once you recognize what you need as well, right? Because I was very good at what I did. And I suspect you were very good at what you did as well. But now I'm really good. Like, I'm really, really, really good.
Because you actually truly realized who is the real Brent.
Absolutely.
And that is a skill, but that doesn't come just like that, because there is no real Brent when you're young.
No.
You're actually trying to spread your wings as a teenager and in your tweens. You try to figure out, who actually am I? So there is no one you. You're dabbling a bit in that, and your haircut changes, your outfit changes, you try that. That's not really me. And then at some stage you find something that sort of may or may not work for you for a while. And it's that kind of difficulty. So when are you truly the real you? And I must say, for me, that was late 40s, really, after my rehab, that I actually really started to learn about my own emotions, about the drivers that were creating these emotions, the conditioning that was underlying all that. And it's only now, and even today, do I really know who I am? Probably not. Because I'm in the journey.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting what you're saying, because even in my own evolutionary process, I have clients that will call me and say, well, why you want a life coach? Well, I'm just trying to figure out who I am. And I said, I don't know if I really can help you. And they're like, well, you're a life coach, aren't you? And I said, yeah, it's more about your question. And they said, what do you mean? I said, well, who are you? And I said, I believe, my feeling is you'll never know who you are. But what I can help you figure out is, who are you today? Right? Most people are trying to look. I always ask my clients, are you a past, present, or future person? If we're mostly in the past, that usually is dominated by depression and sadness. If we're mostly worried about the future, that's more anxiety. But being in the present moment is where you can experience the joy. I said, so, let's just work on who you are today, because that's going to be different than tomorrow or 6 weeks from now. And to your point, who am I really? Well, I would gently suggest to you that, as I was, in your alcoholism, that was your real you, right? That was just you at that moment in time. And so,
Love it.
Do we become, it's like I've done so much work on the concept of happiness, because like in my 30s, it's like, I just want to be happy, and I just want to be happy. I just want to be happy, and studied, watched all the shows and different things. And now I'm like, yeah, no, I'm so not interested in being happy. I get that it's a choice, right? And that it's not a destination, right? But again, for me, I think what happens, and to your point, when we're saying, who am I really? As if there's a moment in time where you go, oh, this is who I am. So you're saying that when you were an alcoholic and you were, not making good choices, or when you had depression, that wasn't who you were. No, that is who you were, right? Exactly. And to own that, so that because once you own that, then you can become whatever the next version of that is. But without that moment in time, you don't get this moment in time.
Absolutely. And that is so important. And that is reflected, that wisdom is reflected in virtually every one of my guests. When I ask them, would you go back in time? If you had a time machine, would you change your story? And the vast, vast, vast majority of them says no. Because without what happened to me in the past, I would have not been the person who I am now, and I cherish that person. I cherish the lessons, the hard lessons that I had to learn to become who I am now, to be able to be the person who can leave a legacy, who actually can give meaning to pain, give meaning to suffering, and being the bringer of hope out there. That is why we do what we do, because we have seen the chaos and the negative things in our time, and now it's time to actually say, yep, that's me, but it doesn't define me. So all the scars, mental and physical, that was the past. And without that, I wouldn't be me. But yeah, I'm not just my scars. I'm not just the mess that I was. No, I'm actually the version 2.0, 4.0, wherever you are in your transformational journey.
That's exactly right. Yeah, it's who am I today? I can't tell you who you're going to be tomorrow because tomorrow hasn't shown up yet. But by working on who we are today, tomorrow is able to happen.
Oh, it's beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I can't wait for your book on Shawshank Redemption, and I can't wait for your book right now.
Two books. I have one book called The Red Balloon. We'll come back on when that. So I have
okay, you're on.
Yeah, I have a book that's coming out Mother's Day. It's called The Red Balloon: Inspiring or Transforming Your Life One Inspirational Story at a Time. So it's about the death of my mom and how she and I proved that there was life after death. And I was fortunate enough to win a contest on the Today Show here in the United States called Everybody Has a Story. So they got 100,000 stories. And what they did, which was kind of wonderful, is they asked people to submit stories where they had overcome pain or tragedy in their life, right? And how did they get through it? And I was actually waiting for my plane from Atlanta, Georgia to go to LA. So I typed it really fast. I sent it in. And what I didn't know is they got 100,000 stories. And what I didn't know is once a week for 8 weeks, they were going to pick a winner and fly you out. And what I really didn't know is I'd be winner number 8. And so from that in 2010, really became that pivotal moment of doing what we're doing and talking about now is peeling back more layers of, who am I today? What is this all about? And so, yeah, the book it's taken me 10 years. It's amazing. We just picked the book cover yesterday after 6 months of looking at that. But it's a simple life coaching book. It's about the relationship between my mom and I. It talks about what happens life after death, because my mother was very big in talking about that. I'm working with a client right now, and I can share because I'm not sharing his name, but his mom unfortunately committed suicide a couple of years ago. And, as I said, I'm an intuitive life coach, and we had a couple sessions. And for some reason I asked him, and you and I are having a very organic conversation, which I appreciate. And I said, what are some of the top lessons that your mom taught you while she was alive? And so he was, we were doing Zoom, and he was telling me what they were. And I said, did your mother ever teach you how to live without her?
Ooh.
And he said, no.
Ooh.
I said, we don't teach that, and my book teaches that, because I realized, post my mother's death, because she passed in 97 from cancer at the age of 59, and going through my own trauma and loss and such of that, we don't teach that, and that's what he was struggling with. Right. My mother taught me so many lessons, and his mother taught him so many lessons that didn't teach him that. And my mom, and what this book is about, is all the various lessons that we learn through, our life experience, and just poignant stories, very chicken soup for the soul like, but have exercises at the end of each story. So then you can take what you're feeling at that moment in time, process it, and then create some action steps necessary in dealing with it.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Wow.
Yeah. Have you taught your sons how to live without you?
Wow. No, because that would mean that I have to face my own fear of mortality.
That's exactly because that's what my mother was really good at. I mean, she was the strangest woman, but I loved her so much, and people gravitated towards. I mean, my mother was a life coach and never got paid. I mean, she really was quite good at that, and I think this book shows that. But she would. My mother would, and I tell so many stories about her, but she would just look at, she's like, what do you think about dying? I was like, I'm sorry, what? We're eating at McDonald's. What are you talking about? She's like, what do you think about dying? And she would have these amazing conversations with me based on a simple question, and then because she always created a safe space, I could have that. Now, retrospectively, at 12,
Wow.
13, 7, 16, you know, I look at that and hence the book. I'm like, oh, she was preparing me. Okay. Got it.
Bloody hell. A wise woman. A very
Very,
wise woman.
very.
Oh, phew. See, that is
You know,
a
this
whole.
was going to happen, did you?
No, no. The reality is that is okay. Right, Brent. Here I make the announcement now in official. Brent will be now a recurring theme on this podcast because there are so many things that we need to dissect. And certainly, for crying out loud, I'm 56. There are days when I walk into the bathroom and switch on the light and think, who the fuck are you? And because I don't recognize myself, I'm 21 in there. I don't want to be that body, okay? I don't want to be old. I don't want to even think about that the possibility that I die. Okay, yet these fears, I guess they are so natural. They affect all of us, and especially those of us who have gone through so much trauma and so much past damage. We are now living our life to the fullest, and therefore to now say, I finally got my shit together, and now I have to die. You're joking. You're kidding me.
Absolutely the biggest joke on mankind. Yeah, you get to your 50s and 60s, you finally got all the answers, and then you're about to, transition. You're like, which is why when I do my life coaching, my niche is millennials.
Yeah.
Right. Millennials, college students, and high school seniors. That's my niche. Right. It's if you want, you can go to brentscarpo.com and take a look. But I think the reason why I gravitate towards that so much and why I had such a great rapport when I was, I've spoken to thousands of colleges, but I was like, I think at an unconscious level, though I was doing it, I've been doing it since I was 13, but when I work, like I have 3 high school seniors right now. And I say to the parents, I say to them, you will never understand for a while the investment that you've made in this child, not in me. You've hired me to invest in your child. That the benefits that you're going to reap, right? Because most of us wait till our 30s, our 40s and 50s before we decide to deal with the trauma of when we were 7 or 12 or 15. I said, they're so ahead of the curve. And so now when they get to their 20s and 30s, they may not have as much stuff to deal with, or they have the tools because they invested in themselves at that moment in time to deal with this. So we don't have to, pause our life because we're going through depression or anxiety or PTSD or alcoholism or addiction, or the case may be.
So true. So true.
Yeah.
I mean, that's another whole interview that we need to make. Because for me, the question is, if you're talking about millennials, if you're talking about young men and women, since when do they listen? Since when do they want to seek help? That is still quite a what is that? 1% who are ready for that? Who says, hey, I'm 16. Full of testosterone. I am full of hormones, and yes, I think I should better get some mental guidance and actually have a life coach. Said no millennial ever. So, how do you grab those young people? Do they come in shackles? Are they being brought in, or how do you lasso them? And how does it work?
I would say it's a bit, at least, I've seen a major transformation since the time I was in college to now. Look, when I was in college, I went to a private Catholic college, and we had one sister that was part of that. She was like the nurse. That's it. Now, thank goodness, you've got colleges that actually have hospitals on ground, and they actually have psychiatrists and psychologists and counselors. And so I think it's more so there than we're giving credit to, because I've seen the changes and such. But even with the resource there, to your point, you have to admit that you're broken, which is the most difficult thing to do, especially in your 20s and 30s, in order to make the appointment, in order to get onto the campus deal. Yeah, that's difficult. I would say 50% of my clients that are, I get this, like, well, my mom wanted me to call. Or I'll get emails saying, my name is, I have a son that's 21, that's 18, that's 25, that's 26. I have a 28-year-old son that's still living with me, and he graduated in college 9 years ago. These kinds of things. And so it's where the helicopter parent has gotten so sick of seeing their child at 29 eat the food out of the refrigerator and not pay for any of it, that they're like, okay, clearly I'm not doing what's necessary. So we're going to hire out and we're going to get somebody. And so sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Sure. Well, there's no guarantee, but I always kept saying that I would, if I had power to dictate something about education, I would make it mandatory for every 16-year-old to go into rehab for a month. Yeah. And that rehab that was the best thing that ever happened to me. It was an inpatient program where I was introduced to myself, to good habits, to where people helped me hold a mirror in front of my face and actually showed me who I really was at that time and showed me solutions and ways forward and showed me potential future role models, things like that. So that was the best investment ever of every single cent I earned in my life. That 27,000 for a month of all paid fun in rehab, that was the best thing, and I would make that.
Yeah, I think whether it be I think there's a lot of different ways to do. I think. And I'm seeing a little bit of this change, and I go into school systems, and I've been doing some life coaching with seniors who are about to graduate, so that's been good. Nice. I think going to rehab would be good. I've often said that I think every high school student on the planet should not graduate unless they've been to a country outside of the United States.
Oh, beautiful! Yeah.
Right. Agreed. Sorry, you have to have a GPA of 2.5 or higher. You have to do 80 hours of community service during your 4 years in high school, and you have to visit another country outside the United States. That's the only way you get a diploma.
I love it. I love it.
Absolutely.
But says a man who lives in a country where only 15% of the population actually have got a passport to travel overseas. Is that not the statistic?
Yeah, it's a lot of well. Obviously, in the last 2 years, I didn't know that statistic. That's a great statistic.
I thought so. I need to fact check. Please don't quote me yet on it, but I'm pretty certain that's around the.
It's so interesting. So there are certain things that and again, I'm like, I invented my life coaching program based on all the. So to your point, I'll say to people, congratulations on investing in yourself by hiring me. It's the greatest investment you're going to make at whatever age they're at, because it really takes a lot of courage to be able to do that. And I said, I've been doing this since I was 13. Don't ask me why. I just have. So when people hire me, they not only get me, but they get the day I met Mother Teresa. They get the day I took a workshop with Desmond Tutu. They get the day that I actually sat on the dais with Arun Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi's grandson, because I'm constantly doing that. It's just something I have to do, right? But that takes courage. It takes time. It takes money. And a lot of people get so swept into their own daily rut and routine and fears that they don't want to go outside of the paradigm that they have in their brain.
And that's so important, isn't it? And it is, and that's where the goal setting comes in. That's where where you have got choices to make, and we keep forgetting that you don't have to make the choices. You get to make the choices. That is the difference. It's your possibility to grow. My wife set me down my wife set me down last Saturday, and I was busy with other things, and she said, no, come on. Let's sit down. When do you want to retire? And I want to know, what will your retirement look like? Because at the moment I'm working stupid hours. And that's my choice. Because of COVID, we don't know, uncertainty, blah, blah, blah. Sure. So I'm working crazy times, and I'm heading for burnout big time if I don't really look after myself. So she's made me sit down. How does that look like? You're no longer working as an anesthetist. So now, what are we going to do? And I thought, travel. Where to? And so it was exactly planning out and going out there thinking, wow, what would I like to do? And when you said, meeting really beautiful people around the world that immediately brought me back there, because I thought, actually, I want to see that, and I want to write a book in Argentine about the Nazis that have fled after the Second World War, and I want to live in that town, and I will write about Hitler living there, kind of a thing, you know? It's that kind of, yeah, actually, that's what I want to do. And actually, the moment I spelled it out like that, I felt a surge of energy flowing through me, and I felt this rejuvenation. I was tired at that moment in time. I had a long, long week, and I was just sort of half grumpy, half, yeah, okay. And then suddenly I felt, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. And it was a great feeling. And that is the beautiful thing. So we get to make these choices. We get to do that. You went there already. So you, in your path as a life coach, you are just what? You're a few steps ahead of many of those people who are coming along with you that are seeking your help. But you are modeling it. You're going out there. You're kicking ass.
Absolutely. There's certain things that when someone asks me, you know, I have a 4-month program. It's 21 sessions. It's sort of, not to say basic, but it's the one that really works. And I've been very specific on the book that I use. And eventually I'll be using my book along with it. Yeah. But, you know, as you well know, you know, it takes 90 days or plus to actually change behavior. You know, the 30-day thing, or, you know, read my book on addiction and you'll be free from alcohol. Really? I literally, every time I see the commercial here in the States, I just want to choke this person. I get so offended and so freaked out by it. But, you know, it takes that time and investment. So there are certain things over the course of my life, and then seeing like simple things. So like my client, you know, they'll sign up and say, well, there's certain things I need you to do while we're doing it. It's like, what? I need you to make out a will. And they're like, what? I'm only 32. Yeah, you need to make out a will. So if you're not willing to make out a will during my life coaching, then I can't take you on as a client. Oh, okay. And to your point, and I just remember this, do you have a passport? No. Yeah, you got to get a passport. But I'm not going anywhere yet. So if you want me to be, I won't. I won't do it. You right? And there's certain things that I just know. And so when I say this, it's just like their whole brain just goes on fire. It's like, so I have to make a will. I have to get a passport. Yeah. Then you have to take a personality test, the Myers-Briggs personality test. We got to see what personality you are. And fair amount of people have done that. But there are certain just things that I have the list somewhere that they've got to do. And they've never even, especially, I always start with the will, right? Because to me, psychologically, we got to start with their death of who they think they are in order for me to help them to be reborn.
A phoenix first must burn.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Okay. No, that's beautiful. That's absolutely beautiful. But then again, what are you teaching them? You're teaching them to take action. Yes. You're teaching them small steps to actually move forward. Small, measurable goals that you can do right now. What do you mean you're still listening?
Think about things that they're not going to think about. Like when I say, okay, well, one of the things you've got to do, you know, if you're not willing to do this, I can't take you on as a client, is we need to make out your will. I'm only 27. I don't care.
Exactly.
Right? COVID. How many 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds, 40, 50, you know, how many people died? It's over 1 million just in the United States alone, or under 1 million. You know, we don't know. I had 2 friends in the Twin Towers on 9/11. They didn't know in their 30s that they were going to go that day. I said, so yeah, we're going to make a will. So then, you know, the people that you love don't have to worry about any, you know, whatever wishes you want. Right. So I always start them in the end and then work our way back.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. So it's BrentScarpo.com. Is that?
Yeah, you go to BrentScarpo.com, BrentScarpo.com. If you want, and I just did this with a young lady from New Zealand yesterday, because I did a podcast and it was a live podcast, and she loved it so much she emailed me because I talked about something we haven't talked about, you know, here, but we'll do it another time, about harmony versus balance in life. And so she gravitated towards that. So I do a complimentary strategic consultation. It's an intuitive reading. You can email me at brent@brentscarpo.com, or you can text me at 760-835-3327. That's my cell phone. Yes, I give it out. But just text me first. It's a California, so get all the codes that you need, probably 01144 and all those things. But if you text me or email saying, hey, I heard you on, the show, and I would love to have a strategic consultation with you in an intuitive reading, it's completely complimentary.
Guys, look down there into the description of the YouTube video and of the podcast. You've got it all there ready for you. And you would be silly not to take the chance. So, Brent, you were an amazing guest. Thank you so much for just making me think, making me reevaluate certain things about myself, and making me thirsty for transformation, for actually reshaping my near future. Because it is, and that's great. Thank you. I'm so excited. And Brent, so I'm really bouncing a bit like Tigger here. So you have just reignited the batteries.
Thank you so much. Thank you for everything you do. I love the platform. I love this opportunity. I love the fact that you bring together all as many human beings as possible. I'll leave you with this. I'll leave you with this last bit. It's one of the stories that's in my book. Right. I don't think I've rarely shared this, but I think it really speaks to what you're saying and feeling, what I'm saying and feeling. And I think a lot of people who might be viewing this. So one of the stories talks about when I was 7 years old and I was in Pennsylvania and I looked at my mom. I said, Mom, how many people are in the world? Right. And my poor mother, because I'm the oldest of three children, kind of rolled her eyes and looked at this young child of hers going, oh, God, not again. Right. Because I could tell. And she's like, well, hold on. So, this was pre-Google and pre-computer. So we had to get the Encyclopedia Britannica. Oh, for those of you who are millennials, just Google it. You'll see what I'm talking about. So it was an actual book that you actually had on a shelf that had whatever it was at that moment in time. And so she took the time, which is what you're doing with me now, which I appreciate. And we sat down and we had that mother-son moment. And she said, this is how many people are in the world. And then she went beyond that, which is what you've done with me. And, she said, here's the globe. She got that old metal globe. And she said, this is North America. And we live here in Pennsylvania, but Daddy used to live in California, when he left. And then she talked to me about South America and she talked to me about Australia. And, I'm sure she talked about New Zealand and Antarctica and, all the people. And she did this like 10-minute little soliloquy of exchange of information. Finally, she looked at me and I was just like captivated, right? I'd never seen the world, the globe. And she said, Brent, why did you want to know how many people were in the world? And I looked at her with all the seriousness in my heart. And I said, because I want to meet them all. And my mother looked at me and she said, I think you just might.
And you're on your way to do so. And
and you've allowed me that opportunity to fulfill a wish to my mother and to that question. So I thank you for allowing me to be a guest.
Brent Scarpo, an amazing man, and I'm looking forward to our next few interviews that are coming on. You guys out there, I hope you feel as infused as I am. You have good choices to make right now. You can change your life. Right now, you can get up, have a glass of water, actually rehydrate, stretch yourself, do something for your body. And, these are tiny little steps, but these are the steps that set you into action. Because once you're in action, once you started feeling good, you say, well, that's actually quite nice. So go out there. Guys, I believe in you and look after yourself. Bye.